Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. Hey, Bigfoot Society, you've got the privilege of talking to Mr. Scot Violette today. You may know him from the group Squatch America. I'm going to read a few things about Scot. He was nice enough to provide here. He's a Native American cultural anthropologist and the founder of Squatch America, which is a national Bigfoot research group. He's a Desert Storm Army veteran and travels the U.S. full-time in an RV with his wife, Hannah, investigating cryptid sightings and exploring Native American rock art related to Bigfoot lore. And of course, they have their YouTube channel, which we'll probably talk about later, and it's a mix of science, history, and hands-on research. Welcome to the show, Scot. How's it going, sir?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I do like to start out when I have interviews with individuals such as yourself that are really have been into it for a while. I always like to know, what was it that first got you into the Sasquatch community?
Well, it goes back quite a ways, actually. I was actually born in Eastern Oregon, and I grew up in the Blue Mountains, which is heavily trafficked by Bigfoot and Bigfoot enthusiasts. I don't know if people are familiar with the Freeman film from the early 90s. I grew up 15 miles from where that film was taken. So, Bigfoot folklore, I guess, was pretty common in the area I grew up in. But as a teenager, I really didn't pay too much attention to it. I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, deal. But later on in life, after I became a Native American culture anthropologist and started working with tribes all over the nation, I started to notice a common theme. Every tribe in the nation has a name for these things, and they all have legends and stories and history. And particularly, my expertise in Native American culture is pictographs. I learned how to read them, all 4 different languages of them. And when I started finding stories about Bigfoot on rocks, that are hundreds of years old, that started to pique my interest a little bit. So after I retired, I thought, you know what, I'm going to look into this Bigfoot legend a little bit closer. And as I started looking into it, and I set up a Facebook page to try to get stories from people locally. As soon as I did that, I got hundreds and hundreds of stories from people in the area. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot more to this than I originally thought. And then I started delving in and I got hooked. So I've been there ever since.
That's awesome. I mean, in this whole subject, I don't think it takes much to hook you. If it gets you just right, you're in it for the long haul. So you made a local group that was local to the Blue Mountain area, you were saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
You got hundreds you must have gotten some really wild stuff from that area.
Oh yeah. And we still do today. We still get people telling us stories and finding things. It's amazing.
So do you think that area is definitely a active hotspot in the Blue Mountains current day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We find footprints in that area almost every year. What a lot of people don't realize about the Blue Mountains of Eastern Oregon, it has, 26,000 square miles of forest that nobody lives in. That's a plus. But the upper end of the Blue Mountain Range runs into Idaho and into Montana and connects with the Rocky Mountains. And then the southern part goes south through the Ochoco Mountains and connects with the Cascades, which goes south into Northern California and then into the Sierras. It's a natural corridor between the 2 mountain ranges. So I think if they do migrate or move from time to time, this is the corridor they take. We're basically a hallway, to get from the Rockies to the Cascades. And so there is a lot of activity there, and I think as they move is where we're finding Bigfoot in that area all the time.
That just opened my mind to a way I have not looked at the map before, and it totally it could, it's a corridor from the Rockies. That's amazing. How does one become a Native American cultural anthropologist?
Lots of college and bills, student loans. Let's count student loans. Basically, what I originally went into college, and first I had a career in the military, and then when I got out, I used my GI Bill to pay for it, so that helped a lot. But what got me interested in it is I had originally went into college just to go into anthropology in general, and I didn't really have a direction in anthropology. It's a huge field, and there's a lot of directions you can go in it. But luckily, the college I went to, the professor there was really into like the Native American side of things, and our college actually had an archaeological dig on a Native American village, that's 200 years old, that we were sifting through, and it was part of our project every year to go work on this. And when I started seeing the pictographs and stuff in the area, I thought, wow, that is really cool. I really love the depictions. Plus, my professor was also into Egyptian folklore, so we actually had a whole course we had to do on Egyptian pictographs, and stories. In fact, at the end of the year, one of our finals was all you have to do is write your name on a piece of paper and turn it in. And if I can read your name in Egyptian hieroglyphics, you pass. So we actually had to learn, that detail of the Egyptian language. So when I started comparing that to the Native American language on rocks, I started discovering that, this is easier to read than I thought it was. A lot of 90% of Native American pictographs are basically directions. Go up this mountain, there's deer, the rivers to the south, stuff like that. And when I started reading those, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. So I said, I want to learn this language. So that's what I got into it. So to get your degree, to start taking classes, I guess I'd have to say, and then you'll find the direction in anthropology you'll like to go.
Has there been an example of a pictograph that you've been able to see over the years that you feel is just a really good example of a Sasquatch pictograph?
Yeah, I've got 3 of them actually that I've found over the years. Well, 4 technically, but one of them is kind of a secret deal, and the tribe doesn't want it to be revealed. So I don't talk about that one too much. But there's a famous one that was originally found years ago in California in Porterville. There's a life-size, 8-foot-tall pictograph of a Bigfoot family, and it tells a story. And what's really interesting about that one is a lot of people's talked about that pictograph for a long time, but when I started looking at it, I noticed something I don't think anybody else had noticed. And there's 2 symbols on the bottom of the pictograph. There's like a story of a hunting party, hunting animals, deer, near a spring, and they found footprints near the spring, and they had an encounter with a Bigfoot family, mother, father, and baby. But down at the bottom of it, it said the hunting party. It had symbols of an ancient weapon called an atlatl. And those atlatl symbols are very interesting because the tribe in that area have actually stopped using or transitioned to using bows from atlatl. Atlatls are like a spear chucking device. And they had transitioned to using bows almost 2,500 to 3,000 years ago. So if this pictograph still had atlatls on it, that dates it a little bit, so I can say that that's possibly, 2,500 to 3,000 years old picture of a Bigfoot. It's probably the first one that we've ever seen. And then I found two more with the exact same symbols on it. And the symbol for a Bigfoot is a creature with short legs, long body, long arms, but the arms are always, you see it like out from the shoulders with the arms hanging down from the elbows. And that is to symbolize the size of this thing. It's big. It's like this wide, it's huge. And then they never have a neck, and it's in the head, is roundish on top, but there's always a kind of a V from the head, which shows there's no neck. And which looks like what Bigfoot would look like to people today. They have a longer torso than we do, the long arms, the huge bodies. So this depiction showing short legs and long arms is telling you that it's not the same proportion as a human. So I have found three of them. There's two in Oregon that I have found, and two in California. Well, the one I can't talk about is in California.
Right.
The three main ones are two in Oregon and one in California.
So I want to clarify something. When you say the Porterville pictographs, is that the same one as the Tule River pictographs?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
same
perfect.
One. Yeah, it's just near the town.
So you have actually, I didn't even think of that possibility. So you've actually found pictographs of Sasquatch yourself in your exploration? Yeah,
two.
Oh my goodness.
I have. A lot of people walk by pictographs and petroglyphs not even noticing that they're there. A lot of times, like moss on rocks will cover them up and things. But if you know what to look for, and I've been doing this for quite a few years, I start noticing them almost immediately when I walk into places. And there's one in the Blue Mountains of Eastern Oregon, by the way, that it has three symbols on it. One of them's the Bigfoot symbol. One of them's a stickman symbol. And the stickman symbol, I might add, is on the same one as the Tule River one. They have stickmen on it too. The stickman is a Native American, danger symbol, basically. They don't even talk about them. If this is on a pictograph, it means danger. So it's got a Bigfoot, it's got a pictograph of a stickman, and it has a pictograph of a circle with a line going into the top of the circle and coming out the bottom of the circle, but not through the circle. And what that is a directional symbol from Native American folklore. It means go up the trail, go around the valley, because it's right there pointing out a valley. Go around the valley, don't go through the valley, danger Bigfoot, basically is what that story says.
This is absolutely fascinating. I think most people are probably familiar with the Tule River one, but I never thought of the possibility that there could be other forms of these same pictographs found in different areas. You're saying the Blue Mountains of Oregon, and then another area in Oregon, some unnamed areas in California.
California, yeah.
Yep. Is the second Oregon, what is that in a similar geographic part of Oregon, or a completely different geographic area of Oregon?
It's in the southern part of the Blue Mountains, down in the Ochiko Mountains, where it's a little more deserty there. It's still a mountain range, but it's more in the kind of the Badlands of Oregon. Is the one we found there, which has it's got 1,000 symbols on this one rock, and it's basically telling a story. But what's really cool about that one is that it really caught my eye, and I thought this is the coolest part of this whole pictograph, is it has two rivers that come together, and it has two symbols of two different bears on there in different locations on the rivers. And then what it does is on one side it has a large depiction of a bear claw, a footprint of a bear. It has that symbol there, and then next to it, it has a symbol of a Bigfoot track. So it literally points out the difference. We know the difference between the bear print and the Bigfoot print. And then on the other river, it has has the typical symbol of the Bigfoot along the river with deer there. So they saw Bigfoot hunting deer by this river. The other river on the other side of the fork is where there are a lot of bears. So beware. It's really interesting, the story that one tells.
Wow, this is absolutely blowing my mind right now. I mean, and so both of those were in Oregon, were found down in the Blue Mountain area.
Yep.
Oh man, are there even more instances of pictographs that have been found in Oregon as well that would contain Sasquatch pictographs in them?
Not that I know of. I mean, there's been some stuff like there's a Bigfoot face that was carved on a rock that was found near the Columbia River. But that's the only other one that I know of. I mean, I'm sure there are probably many out there, but they're probably hidden in the woods somewhere and nobody's just run across them yet.
Wow, man, it feels like. Do you have pictures of what you found? Are these available on your website or YouTube channel at all? Or
But yeah, they're on our website on squatchamerica.com.
okay, we'll definitely have that linked in the show notes. Feels I'm probably just extremely late to this party is what it comes down to. But because I'm like, this is a really big deal, Scott.
Yeah.
Scott's like, I've known about this for a while.
Yeah.
This is cool. I love this, dude. This stuff gets me jazzed up. And oh yeah, okay. So how about this? Is there a catalyst event in your life that happened that really kicked things off? Is like, all right, now I'm going to take an RV around the U.S. with my wife, and really, is there something that happened to you that really got you on board with all this?
Absolutely, there is. I had mentioned I'd started that Facebook page and started getting stories from people, and up until that point, I was probably, after studying, footprint casts, some of the famous ones from the past, and some footprints that I had found. After studying those and noticing the morphology in it, because when you go through anthropology school, you have to literally take a human body skeleton that's in a box and put it together and name every bone in it. So you get to learn, how humans are made and how the history of human development and all that things. So looking into all this stuff, I was like probably 95% sure these things existed. I always had a little bit of doubt in the back of my head until June of 2018. What had happened was we got 5 reports from 5 people that didn't know each other in the same area in the same week. And I'm like, that's where I need to be, So I was going out there. I had been out there for 2 days in a row, and I was going out for the 3rd day, and funny thing happened on the way to Bigfooting. There was my wife's, one of her friends, her dad was having a birthday, and his birthday wish was to go Bigfooting because he'd never done it before. So they contacted me and said, hey, can you take this guy out Bigfooting with you tonight? And I'm like, it's his birthday. And I'm like, sure, no problem. I'd never met the guy before the day, that day. So he hopped in the truck with me. We drove up in the mountains, and we went hiking down this trail that I had checked out, the prior 2 days, because that's where all these reports were coming from. And hiking along the trail, I smelled the worst smell I've ever smelled in my life. And I'm like, I've heard this described, but I've never experienced myself, a wet dog, garbage, and onions and skunk all together. So, it's kind of a really bad pungent smell. So we stopped, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where's that coming from? And we're looking around in circles in the woods, trying to figure out where this is coming from. So I probably did the dumbest thing on the planet, because I was kind of new to it back in the day. So I just went, I growled off in the woods, and it mimicked me exactly. And that's when I saw this little head 200 feet down the hill from me, and this little tiny opening in the tree limbs swaying side by side. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a Bigfoot. And I got my camera up. I got one blurry picture of it, because that's the way it works. And then we heard a whistle off to our left, and it ducked into the woods and vanished. So I spent 3 days there. We went down to where it was at, and I found footprints where it was standing. But I found 9-inch footprints and 16-inch footprints. And then, so I did all my archaeological stuff. I set my camera up on a tripod where I was holding it almost exactly, tried to get the exact spot, shot a laser down through the trees, figured out where it was standing from the footprints, and where the laser hit, the 9-inch footprints was 6 foot tall. But the 16-inch footprints behind it, I thought there was another one that I didn't see until I went back, and until later on, even a couple years later, I got somebody who had the technology to really enhance the photo I had, and there was another face behind it, the adult. I can't tell you how tall that was because it was bent over looking up at us. So that's when I had a Native American, I told this story to a Native American elder, and he said, that's when Bigfoot stole your soul. I'm like, yeah, that's probably the case. So that was the pivotal moment when we decided to sell our house, buy an RV, hit the road. And up until then, I had this little group called Blue Mountain Bigfoot Research, and we turned it into Squatch America and hit the road nationally and started following up on these stories ever since.
Wow, that is fascinating. What do you think the phrase Bigfoot stole your soul means? How do you take that?
Well, there's two different ways to take it in Native American cultures. One,
Okay.
Spiritually, like Bigfoot literally took my soul that day, and that's why I'm looking for him to get it back. That's kind of an, I like to lean towards that one. I need my soul back, Bigfoot. I got to find you again. But another one is you just become obsessed with this to the point where you're going to give up everything and do it. So yeah, that's probably one of the two meanings that I could probably take from that.
It's extremely interesting. Is it possible to give a roundabout area, and this isn't something we talked about beforehand, but the area where the sighting took place, or is it an area where you kind of give a nebulous region? Or
Oh no, I can tell you where it's at. It's, if you go to the Blue Mountains, there's a little town in Eastern Oregon called Baker City, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
And behind Baker City, Oregon, there's a road that goes out of town. It's called Pocahontas Road, and it goes up to this place called Marble Creek, and that's where I had my sighting. Now, this Marble Creek Road goes over top of the Blue Mountains, over the mountain on to the other side of the hill where this little town called Sumter is. Now, this area here it's called the Alps of Oregon. The highest peak is 10,000 feet. It's not an easy drive. You got to have a 4-wheel drive to get up over this mountain. So it's about halfway up on the Baker City side of the mountain. It's where I had my sighting. But it was also in a watershed area where you're not supposed to be. Same as the Freeman film back in the 90s was in the watershed area where people weren't supposed to be. I was walking the edge of it. I was legal. So I wasn't in the watershed area, but so this area, and it was above 5,000 feet. So one of the interesting things I found over the years when we're getting reports of Bigfoot, especially in the Blue Mountains and in the Cascades also, is most of the sightings are over 5,000 feet. That must be a line they draw. Like, they live above that, probably because not many people go above that. So, so that's where it's at. It's in Eastern Oregon, in the Alps of Oregon, outside of Baker City.
Remembering what you saw that day, would you describe it as something that was more ape-like in facial features, or maybe more human-like, or something completely different?
I totally would lean toward more human. It looked more like a person than it did an ape. Having, my background, I can, let's go into what I think these are.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
This is my working theory. Granted, it's a theory, but from what I saw, if I had to picture what the skull looked like underneath the skin, because I've seen lots of humanoid creatures' skulls over the years, I would lean toward this is human. And I'll tell you why in a sec. This is human. It's just an older version of us that hasn't went extinct. And this is why. And there's not this missing link that everybody says they're looking for. If we go back into human history, it wasn't, one thing turning into the other, turning into the other, turning into the other. That's not how it worked. And we know that through DNA even today, that really kind of emphasize this theory that say humans started somewhere. There's always been a human. And no, we did not evolve from apes. In fact, there's a theory today that maybe apes evolved from us, not the other way around. But there was always a human back in history somewhere that started, and they adapted. So if you think about like a group of humans in Africa, 3 million years ago, as their population grew, the area they lived in couldn't sustain them. So this group moved over here, and then they moved again, and then they moved again over, millions of years. Well, by the time they got into Europe, their bodies have changed because they're in a different type of forest, different climate. They had to adapt. So their bodies changed over thousands of years. But they're the same people that started in Africa, if you look at it that way. They just look different. So at any given time in human history, there's been, 5 to 6 types of humans that live together at the same time. We're Homo sapiens, but did you know we overlapped Homo sapiens with Homo floresiensis, which is actually newer than us? Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, Homo nadali, and Homo neanderthal. There's 6 that overlapped with us that were still alive while we were alive. And here's the big shocker. Did you know that Neanderthals are still alive?
That I did. I know they've been able to find this is what I've heard, individuals with pieces of Neanderthal DNA. I think that's real. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. That is absolutely real.
Okay.
That is absolutely real. So Neanderthals came from France, and they came from the Acadian region of France. So they didn't go extinct. The French people bred them out. They're actually, we're talking back in the paleo times, but they are us. They are in us. So if you're French and you're from the Acadian region of France, which I am actually, 5% of my DNA is Neanderthal. And if you want to know Acadians, when they migrated to the United States in the 1600s, and they're the French people speaking people in Maine and Nova Scotia and Canada, and then some of them migrated around the Horn and landed in Louisiana, and the word Acadian got changed to Cajun. So if you wonder why Cajuns are a little off, is because they're part caveman. I'm Acadian French. My dad is full-blooded. I'm half Acadian French, Cajun. So we bred them out. So they're still alive. So why is today any different than it has been for the last, 300,000 or 400,000 years? We've always lived together with another type of human, another adaptation of us. So why is today any different? I believe that these things are us. They are a human, an older version, or maybe even a newer version. It could be that too. But I would lean towards an older version of us that hasn't had to change or adapt because they're fine the way they are and have been that way for thousands of years.
Okay, so this is very interesting. I'm going to go down this road with you. So it's fascinating. So in that case, then, so let's say you get these reports of things like infrasound and really interesting things. Is that saying then that maybe we forgot how to do these things?
Or we lost it over the years.
Right.
Yeah. So here's something very interesting. We get into the infrasound and the whistles and stuff. I have recorded whistles. I've got recorded whoops that I have recorded. And one of the really cool things I did is I took a little bit different path. My wife has her degree is in music, and she was a choir teacher and a vocalist and a voice coach. And her college professor, same, but with a doctorate, is into choir and singing and stuff. And I played these whooping sounds for him. And he about fell out of his seat. He goes, "Oh my gosh, I hear something that you probably don't, because you don't do this every day." He goes, "These sounds are in 5 octaves, and humans can only do 3. I'm like, okay. So we threw it in a spectrograph, took a look at it. Yes, they are in 5 octaves. What that means is they have one more fold in their vocal cords than we do. We have 2, they have 3. And so they have a higher and lower range of sounds they can make.
Okay.
And when I was talking to the college, professor about this, he goes, humans, some people are still born with those, but typically we lost them over the years when we started becoming civilized and didn't need to make those sounds anymore. So humans did at one time have the 3 vocal folds. So we have lost them because we don't need them anymore. Like we don't need our appendix anymore, over the years when we started to become civilized and started doing agriculture and not, hunting and gathering anymore.
I wonder if this almost explains how sometimes you have witnesses that say it sounded like it was this and this at the same time.
Exactly.
Oh man, this is blowing my mind. This is awesome, dude. Wow. I can't remember where, but I have heard someone else mention the double fold. You said double fold in the vocal cords, right?
Yeah, well, they have 3. They have 3 folds.
3.
We have 2.
3. So trifold. Wow, that's wild.
Trifold, yeah.
Man, I'm going to be thinking about that for a while.
So that just to add to that a little bit, that's why I don't go in the woods and whoop at night. Because they know we're human. We can't reach the octaves they do. They're like, "Oh, that's a person."
Oh, that's even crazier, dude. So yeah, like when so using that theory, when we do whoops, it's even more of a giveaway than, using like IR. It's probably very similar. Yeah. Like, yeah, we're here, Oh, that's crazy, dude. Unless you're playing an actual recording of a Bigfoot, then you can kind of get away with it.
That's it. Yep.
So how do the reports of infrasound play into this theory then?
Well, I think they do have infrasound because they have the ability to do it. I mean, they're not the only creatures on the planet that does that. Elephants, lions, tigers, there's a whole plethora of animals that have this ability. They use it as I don't know how else to put it, as a weapon, because the reason tigers can do it or use it is that if you can growl so low that what you're growling at can't hear it, but they feel it. It actually shakes them to the core. You can put an animal into fight or flight or shock. So if you put something into a shock, it's going to be stunned for a moment. That gives me time to grab it. So, that's why tigers do it. It'll put their prey in kind of a shocked mode where it just stands there and doesn't know what to do. And that gives the tiger more time and ability to jump on it. So, it may be a leftover, just hunting tactic that they use.
Have you ever experienced that yourself?
Me personally, no. Not that I can recall. Okay. I don't know if, I've felt kind of eerie times in the woods. That could possibly be it, but, I can't, equate that. Because I just recently got a recorder that records infrasound, so we can see if I start feeling weird in the woods. I can record it and see, is there infrasound happening now? But personally, no, I can't say that I have had an instance that did that. Now, I've had screams at night that are so loud and terrifying that it made the coyotes shut up. So that's a different thing. But no, I haven't had the infrasound that I can recall.
Was that in the Blue Mountains that you experienced that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. I've experienced that out in Lane County near Oak Ridge, where it was like a scream / roar thing. It really freaked me out, dude. Yeah, is weird. I'd love to hear it again though, but it was freaky as all get out. It's like 3:00 in the afternoon. Yeah, that area is weird. So walk me through when you are driving around the US in your RV with your wife for Squatch America. What is kind of your mission when I'm assuming you're going probably to different towns. Maybe you have, you're going to different hotspots. So I guess I really don't know, but
yeah, we tend to go to where there's like different hotspots across the United States. But the thing about what we do is a little bit different. My truck has our logo all over the side of it, and it says Bigfoot Research Team, and it's really audacious and stands out. And there's a reason I do that. It's because we can't stop at a gas station without getting a Bigfoot report from somebody who's at the gas station gassing up, or go to the grocery store. We'll come out of the grocery store. There'll be 2 people standing next to our truck ready to tell us their Bigfoot stories. So that's what we use when we go into different areas. We belong to this like campground system thing that we bought into. It's called Thousand Trails, and they have 200 campgrounds across the United States. So we can stay 3 weeks at a time at each one of these, and that's what we do. We go park the trailer, spend the first week getting Bigfoot reports from people around the area, and then we spend the next couple of weeks. Our truck also has a tent on the top. It's an overlander, so we'll leave the trailer in the campground, and then we'll just go off into the woods and spend 2 or 3 days at a time following up on the reports we get in the area.
That's awesome. What is the craziest, let's say you're just driving to an area and you just, all of a sudden you find yourself in the middle of this like Bigfoot mystery. There's tons of reports and you're like, wow, things are just clicking. Have you ever experienced anything like that in a certain area?
Oh yeah. We've run across it in a couple different times. Crazy enough, it's kind of where we're kind of at right now. We tend to follow up on Bigfoot reports in Texas in the wintertime because, it's nice here. It's like 72 today. So, growing up in Eastern Oregon, I'm kind of done with winter. But so we had that happen to us down here. We stopped at this little area outside of a place called Whitney, Texas. And I didn't think there was some Bigfoot reports like on the Bigfoot Mapping Project and the BFRO site in that area. But when we got there, oh my gosh, as soon as the community knew we were there, the guy from the newspaper called us, asked us to come down and do a story. They posted it in the newspaper. We got tons of report from this one area. And so we went to this campground there. Believe it or not, it's kind of weird. Texas doesn't have a lot of, national forests. Everything here is like almost private. But we did happen to find a guy who said, yeah, come camp on my land. I've got to see Bigfoot all the time. And so I went and camped on this guy's ranch, which, thousands of acres. And lo and behold, we found footprints down by the creek. It's kind of weird. So that was one that really stood out. And another one is kind of close. If you're in the Cascades there's another time we went camping near Crater Lake. And we had fire crews stop when they saw the truck, stop. Hey, we heard this last night. We had another guy saying, oh yeah, I hear them every night, go up this road. Which led us into something we've been actively doing for 4 years now. I try to spend part of my summer up there. Is we found a spot. Now this one I'm not going to give you quite details, but if you know where Diamond Lake is, it's in that area. There's a road. I'll even give you the road. It's called, oh my gosh, it just went out of my head. Oh my gosh. Anyway, maybe I'm not supposed to tell you that. But
there you go.
Yeah. Wendigo Pass. That's what it's called.
Wendigo Pass.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Believe it or not. Yeah. So in this area, 4 years ago, after everybody's talking about this, we found this little pond. I'm not going to tell you where this is at, but we hiked up to this little pond, and the only way in is hiking. And we found 3 sets of footprints. We found 13-inch prints, 9-inch prints, and 6-inch prints. And this is something I really go into when I do my I speak at a lot of Bigfoot festivals, and it's one of the things we talk about in big festivals. But so that was 4 years ago, and we go back to the same area every year. We found tree structures. We've had a long distance sighting of one up on top of a mountain. We since then have found 21-inch print. So we've got mom, dad, and 2 kids. And we found our little guy again last year. We found his footprints near a different pond up there. And he's went from his 6-inch prints to 10-inch prints in 4 years.
Mm.
So and we've been doing some off the cuff things. We've been putting out puzzles in the woods for them. You know, we'll stack rocks like in a pyramid, or we'll actually use those, you know, those kids' toys with the little round donut look things, and you stack them up on the stick and they form a pyramid. We put those in the woods. That's actually a cognitive test, by the way. So we've been putting those out in the woods and stacking the rocks up, and they have been playing with them. They've been rearranging them in a way that, you know, it's intelligently done. It's not just, you know, deer knocking it over or whatever. So after we did that for a couple of years, when we went back into that area, we started finding rocks put on logs for us and arranged. 500-pound rocks that we couldn't rearrange. So I don't know if they're playing with, we're teaching them. I don't know what's going on, you know, with that. But that's an area that we've been. It's been a hot spot for us for 4 years now, and that's kind of one of our major research areas.
Scott, oddly enough, so this show gets some weird electrical stuff, and sometimes the voice modulation, it almost sounds like. And right when you start talking about like moving huge rocks and stuff, it's like every time I'm like, I don't know if this is the government or if it's Bigfoot messing with my stuff. Oh, it's wild. But that's not surprising at all. I mean, I take a lot of, you know, reports from north of 58 in that area, kind of like going west over to Oak Ridge and Dexter. And I mean, that whole area is just bonkers.
The word Wendigo in Native American terms is a bad thing. You know, it's not a good thing.
Right.
That's pretty interesting. It's kind of interesting that, like, it, you know, I've interviewed like 75 tribes and I got the names for these things. And it's kind of weird that half the tribes is almost a 50-50 split. Half the tribes call them like benevolent brother, hairy man, you know, the other people, stuff like that. But the other half call them like Wendigos or monsters, killers, cannibals. So I think there's good Bigfoot and there's bad Bigfoot. You know, like they're good people and there's bad people. You know.
Have you found tribes where they call them both, or it seems to be a one or the other type thing?
It seems to be a one or the other type thing. And it's primarily the southern tribes are the ones that have the bad words for them. So, you know, the one, you know, like in New Mexico and in Texas here and Louisiana and down in Florida, their names for them tend to be, I wonder if the southern Bigfoot are just meaner. I don't know.
I mean, going by the reports that I hear, I don't know. I kind of feel like it might be a little bit more aggressive down there, but that's that's a discussion in itself. Do you ever go out in the Midwest, like Iowa, Nebraska, that part of the country at all?
Yeah, actually, there's the Omaha tribe in Nebraska.
Hmm.
Is they have uh, they have a really interesting relationship with the Bigfoot there, and in fact, they look to Bigfoot in that area as almost a shaman. And it's kind of interesting, kind of the tribal elders and like the medicine woman tells stories that they will take whatever plants that are ripening in whatever season, they'll take those and they'll go into the woods and they'll lay them out on a rock, and then they'll wait a few days, they'll go back, and then something will have removed some of them from the rock and left some of them there, and that's the stuff that works good for the medicines they need during that season.
Oh, that's really interesting. And that's north of Omaha, like where it's referred to as Satanga. Is that the same area?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Gotcha. Yep. Have you ever gotten anything directly from Iowa?
I haven't.
Okay.
We haven't spent a lot of time there either, so.
We don't have a lot going on. We have a little bit of weird stuff, but not a lot. So I can understand why you wouldn't. I have seen in the past where you guys will do like Bigfoot town halls. Is that right?
Yes, we do. We do that as often as we can wherever we get into an area and we can hook up with somebody, to set up a place and time and all that stuff. But yeah, we do that quite often. And that's where we're getting a lot of insight and reports from people in the areas that we're going to be in.
Can you take a few minutes to talk about what it takes to set up a Bigfoot town hall, or any advice that you have towards that?
Actually, it's a lot easier than I had originally thought it would be. They said you need a little time to advertise it, and we try to set it. Like I said, we can spend 3 weeks in places. So what we try to do is, kind of get it set up immediately when we get somewhere, or if we can set it up, a month or two ahead to get an idea. But basically, we just find places like that have meeting rooms. A lot of times they're bars, pizza parlors, place like that have like these rooms in the back for meetings and things. And we'll, rent the space or whatever to do that. And then we'll try to advertise it in the local newspapers, on the local, Facebook pages and things like that, and let people know that we're going to be there. And then if we can, we'll stick up a banner on the building if they let us, saying when it's going to happen. And we've had crazy results. I mean, it's a hit and miss, I can say that, but we've had like one time we set up one in a little town called Cave Junction, Oregon, and we were expecting, maybe 60, 70 people to show up. We had 280 show up. It was crazy. And then, the pizza parlor ran out of pizza that night. They were really thanking us. But it's really, not a lot to it. And then, but the most important thing, the hard thing to do is once you have the meetings, is to get people to document stuff. We'll have a map of the area. We'll throw up on a table up front. And when people tell us their stories, we ask them if they can come up and mark it on the map, which really helps us a lot. And then recording it. We set up a video recorder and some audio recorders so we can get some good audio. Because when I first started doing these, I totally spaced that part. And I thought, well, they'll come in, they'll fill out this sheet for me. Yeah, they won't, but if I can get them on video, I can remember the stories that way.
Okay. So that I think is a really, I think that, that's a very good piece of advice there, because I found that when I did a festival in Oak Ridge in July, it was overwhelming. I talked to people about their encounters for probably 24 hours in 3 days. It was nuts. I loved it, but it's like, you're writing stuff down on a map, but then, if I had been able to have people record their story, I mean, yeah, that would have been very, very effective. Are these just for your personal archives, I would imagine then?
Yeah, we have a database that we put stuff in that helps us to track these things. One of the interesting things about the information we get from it, and one of the things I use it for, is if I always try to get dates in at least months. That's the important thing, because after doing this, we're on our 5th or 6th year doing this full time. Is I put a lot of pins and maps, but if you got the dates on them, I've noticed that, like, hey, this area is hot in March every 3 years. This area is hot in June every other year. And that kind of gives me something to go on. Like, if we're going to go research an area, I want to make sure it's when they're there.
That's interesting. You could almost figure out like migration times and stuff.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm still not sure about the migration thing. I think they stay within almost like a 200-mile area. I think they basically rotate crops. They're in like this part of it for 1 year, and then next year they'll be over here, and then next year they'll be over there, and then they'll come back to this, 3 years later.
Do you have any criteria that need to be met in order for you to focus on a certain area, spend 3 weeks there, and try to set up a town hall?
Well, yeah, one of them is kind of mostly if it's going to be in an area that there is like past activity.
Mm-hmm.
I can look on the BFRO site. I'm not going to go to counties that never had a Bigfoot report ever. Like down in the deserts. In Arizona, there's not a lot of activity there, so that's places we don't go. But I like to go to, Dr. Jeff Meldrum has a theory that there's 3 Bigfoot in any 20 square miles of a black bear habitat. So I kind of lean on that a little bit. So any areas that have black bears are generally Bigfoot areas, same habitat. So we tend to try to lean towards staying in areas that there are black bears.
That makes a ton of sense. Out of the 200 and so people that showed up at Cave Junction, how many, or what's the percentage, would you say, of people there actually had an encounter to report?
Oh gosh, I would say at least half of them, and probably I would say I would delete about 20% of those, because some of them are like fairly outlandish. I look for things that have commonality in Bigfoot reports, like the smell, the hair, the way the face looked.
Are there things though that you'll hear in a witness report that'll make you be like, I like what I'm hearing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, some of the commonalities, but the other ones is kind of really weird, is watch their face and their arms. If they start getting goosebumps and their hair stands up a little bit and they start a little shaky in their voice, they had seen something that changed their life, and it still affects them today. So those are the ones I really take close attention to.
This is something that I'm trying to work through myself when I talk to people face to face, like you're talking about. How do you handle sometimes when you talk to a witness, they can get back into that emotional state, and it's almost like it can really affect them, and it's like, how long do I want this person to be back in that state for? I mean, I've experienced a few, and I was really taken back by, like, this is way different than talking to someone over a phone.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and I'm not really good at it. But dun, 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 luckily, my wife is a licensed psychologist. So,
oh, well, there you go, man.
Yeah. So, and she's really good at forensic interviewing and things like that. So when they start getting really shaky, she kind of takes over for me, and she kind of knows the limits. I don't want to put somebody through, PTSD,
Right.
from doing this, but it helps to reassure them that you're here for them and that they're safe now and stuff like that.
Scott, it's been such a fascinating conversation with you. I do have another question for you here at the end.
Okay.
So let's say there's an individual and they're like, man, I really want to get out there and have a Bigfoot experience. Do you have things that you recommend people maybe to lean towards if they're going to go out and try to have an experience themselves? Or
Yeah, do your research. One of the best tools that came out recently is the Bigfoot Mapping Project. It's an app you can download. Look on that and find the area that you want to go to has sightings. And secondly, look at the months. I don't care if it happened 20 years ago or last month. Look at the months. And that's where you want to go. And one of the other things that has worked extremely well for us is to go camping. I don't go knock on trees. I don't go whooping in the woods at night. We just go camping and make a spectacle of yourself. You're not going to hunt down a Bigfoot. You're not going to chase it down in the woods. Camo don't work. But if you get them curious enough to come see you, if they're curious, they want to check out the funny looking human people. So that's one of the things I do. I just go camping.
that's great advice. I just remembered one that I forgot. I apologize. This is for the last one. How do you record infrasound?
There's actually recorders that will record it.
Really?
In fact, there's even an app you can get for your phone, an infrasound recorder. The microphones will pick it up. Your ears won't. But it'll show you on a spectrograph. You can even download the app. It works fine. It'll show you on a spectrograph the infrasound that you're not hearing. So.
Okay, so it's as easy as that. Just to start Googling looking on Amazon infrasound recorder, look at that apps, and they're out there. Yep. Okay, that's cool. Yep. All right. Well, Scott, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to share what you've experienced over the years. And maybe listeners keep an eye out for their truck. You never know when you'll see them. But thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you mind taking a few minutes reminding listeners how they can keep up to date best with what you're doing?
Okay. One of the best things is follow us on YouTube. We do 3 videos a week, and that helps us out too with the views. So that's one of the ways we support this. So if you want to check out Squatch America on YouTube, we also have a Squatch America Facebook page, and we're also on X. So if you want to get a hold of us, you can go to our website, squatchamerica.com, and there's a contact form, and there's also a Bigfoot report form. Or you can just email us at squatchamerica@gmail.com.
That's fantastic. So everyone head over to their YouTube account, subscribe, and then let them know that you came from over here. But Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll definitely be keeping in touch with you.
All right. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS And it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.